Welcome to the Finding Financial Freedom podcast with the Frugal Physician, where Dr. Disha Spath will be your companion on this exciting financial adventure. Get ready to conquer debt, build wealth, and embrace a mindful spending lifestyle that will empower you to live life on your own terms.
At Reza and Sharif CPAs, they provide more than just tax returns and financial statements. They deliver strategic financial solutions tailored to your needs. Whether you're a business owner, physician, or investor, Reza and Sharif CPAs can help you navigate complex tax laws, maximize savings, and build long-term wealth. With expert tax planning, accounting, and advisory services, Reza and Sharif CPAs ensure your finances work for you, not the other way around. Take control of your financial future today. Visit rezasharif.com. That's REZASHARIF.com to see how they can help you. Welcome back to Finding Financial Freedom with the Frugal Physician. I'm your host, Dr. Disha Spath. And today we're talking about one of the most exciting and financially overwhelming transitions in a physician's life, the jump from resident to attending. After years of long hours and low pay, that first big paycheck as an attending feels like a breath of fresh air and is so very welcome. We have so many good uses for it. But this transition comes with big financial decisions that can really impact the rest of your life financially. Decisions such as managing student loans, dealing with lifestyle inflation, setting up savings and investments, and making sure that you're building long-term wealth instead of just spending more. So to help us navigate this critical time, I'm thrilled to welcome Dr. Amy Holbrook. Dr. Holbrook is an Associate Program Director at the Abbott Northwestern Internal Medicine Residency Program in Minneapolis, an adjunct professor at the University of Minnesota, and the chair-elect and soon-to-be chair of the National ACP Council of Early Career Physicians. She has a passion for physician wellness and financial education, making her the perfect guest for today's discussion. So welcome, Dr. Holbrook.
Thank you so much, Dr. Spath. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. To start off, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey and how you got into financial wellness?
Absolutely. I, like a lot of folks that are physicians, do not have a lot of financial background. I am not a finance major. I don't come from generational wealth. My parents are actually retired public middle school teachers. And so my interest in personal finance and especially finance for physicians really comes from being self-taught and being interested in this area because I think a lot of physicians are quite intimidated by it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for coming on, and your insight into the resident to attending transition is really key here. So that transition can be really kind of stressful for people, and it's so fraught with areas where we can make mistakes. So let's talk about that today. First, let's talk about the mindset. What are the biggest financial mindset shifts that occur when you're transitioning from resident to attending?
Well, I think a lot. I think when we're in medical school, you're sort of just being poured down upon with debt and you're sort of slowly and steadily drowning. And then once you get to residency and you're finally earning a paycheck, you sort of feel like you got your nose above water and you're sort of treading water and maintaining it there. But once we transition into that attending paycheck, we suddenly are up above the water, and the danger is that we can get blown in the wrong direction. And you've got a lot more flexibility, but you've also got a lot more decisions and a lot more mistakes potentially that you can make with that new higher income.
Yes, absolutely. A lot of potential mistakes. So many attendings that transition from resident and finally get this big paycheck that they've been working so long and hard for, feel the pressure to want to reward themselves or want to reward themselves after residency. So how do you balance that financial responsibility with enjoying this new phase of life?
Yeah, I think you should, right? A lot of us have delayed gratification for a really long time. And this is like an exciting time in your life to sort of, get the guac and the queso, right? And it's a time to do that. I think one of the dangers is growing into this new income really quickly and also growing into this income in a way with a lot of fixed costs that are going to kind of carry on in perpetuity with this new paycheck.
Yes. So what are some common financial mistakes that you see people making?
I think growing into a new paycheck really quickly can be really dangerous, especially if you're signing up for a lot of new expenses all at once, right? A new house, a new car, and then also having to deal with your student loan payments jumping up. And I think that it can be really daunting in the fact that if you sign up for a lot of new fixed costs all at once, in addition to your new higher tax bracket, I think a lot of the new higher income can get eaten up really quickly, and people
Mhm.
get a little bit surprised by that.
Exactly. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. We are signing up for a lot of fixed costs during this time frame. So it's really important to pay attention to what you're signing up for. How do you recommend people reward themselves though in that initial time and when they become an attending?
Yeah, I mean, I think taking a great trip, doing some big event, that sort of thing, those things are great. And, if your car's falling apart and you need a new vehicle, like you can do these things. You just can't generally do them all at once.
Yeah.
And I think, there are certain fixed costs. You have to have a place to live. You have to have some form of transportation. You need to sort out your student loans. If you have kids, you got to pay for childcare. And then you have to deal with your student loans. And I think you have to sort of triage those different priorities and not let all of them be the most expensive version of each of them, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. You mentioned taxes earlier. Can you give us a little insight into how much of our paycheck's actually going to be going towards taxes?
Yeah, I think a lot of folks are very surprised by that when they get their first attending paycheck in how much gets taken out for taxes when you jump up in these new higher tax brackets, which is, of course, a privilege that you're in this position in the first place. But, depending on what state you live in and what your state income taxes are, I'm in Minnesota and, up to over 9% of our pay is taken for state income taxes. You may be up into the 35% income tax bracket, that sort of thing. I think that is all kind of a new reality for new attendings. One thing that I find that a lot of residents and attendings maybe don't understand is actually how taxes work. And I think helping to build your financial literacy to understand how taxes work is a really helpful thing to frame what to expect as you transition into attendinghood.
Yeah, I think especially as new doctors that might be the first doctors in their families. Like
Mhm.
you and I both come from families where we didn't have doctors in our immediate family, and we often don't understand like exactly how big that hit is from the paycheck into the paycheck from taxes. I mean, especially in high cost of living, high tax states like New York and California,
Mhm.
easily 50% of your paycheck might be going towards taxes and then other, pre-tax savings if you're trying to put money away. So I think that's a very important thing for people to look into. And just so people know, there are calculators out there. Just
Mhm.
Google take home paycheck calculator. You can put
Mhm.
in your New York or whatever state you're in, and it will calculate for you what your paycheck will be, right? It's a pretty predictable formula. So you don't have to sit in the dark when you're making these big decisions. So that's really huge. So, like, how do you, when you're teaching your residents as they are graduating towards attending hood, how do you tell them what to do with their first attending paycheck?
Well, the first thing to do with your first attending paycheck is look at it. I'm always amazed how many folks in residency and attendings don't just look at their paycheck, right? They just look at what shows up in their checking account from their direct deposit and just go from there.
Right.
I talk to med students and residents about this all the time that you should look at your paycheck and understand every line and every word on it and what it is. And, you see OASDI on your paycheck, and a lot of people have no idea that that's their Social Security tax.
Yes.
Um, right? They coded it old age survivors disability insurance, but and I think making sure first and foremost that you understand everything that's on it. That's a really important sort of base step. And then understanding why things are going to taxes, why things are going into your hopefully retirement savings directly from your paycheck, et cetera.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Even as not just new attendings, but all attendings going forward, it's so important to actually look at your paycheck at least once a month or after each paycheck would be ideal
Mhm.
because there's so many things on there that even now as a per diem hospitalist, I discover sometimes I didn't get the pay differential that I thought I had, for working an extra shift or whatever, and someone just forgot to put that on. And, so that kind of thing you can find discrepancies and it's very important to keep track of that also for your automatic savings and retirement contributions. important to keep track of that because sometimes, we may not be getting to the max or we might be going over the max.
I mean, the thing is, nobody's going to care about your paycheck more than you. And
Right.
so that keeping tabs on what's happening in your paycheck is super important.
So what percentage of the income do you recommend new attendings aim to save versus spend?
I think this is the whole classic pay yourself first thing. And sometimes I think people don't quite understand what that means. When you pay yourself first, you're paying your future self in the form of retirement savings first. And I think for new physicians and generally all physicians, you should aim for about 20% of your gross pay to be saved for retirement, which sounds like a lot, and it is a lot. But I think, most physicians are getting a late start, right? We've been in school for a really, really long time, and making sure that you're getting that set aside early and often is really important. One mistake I think people make is that they want to wait and get everything settled first before they start saving. But there's these two opportunities, I think, in a physician's life. It's that transition from med student to resident where you're finally making a paycheck. And then this transition from resident to attending where your pay jumps dramatically, where if you get everything set up in the first place, you don't miss it, right? If you start out saving 20% on your first paycheck, you will never get used to that higher pay and then have to cut it back later if you just started out in the right way, saving 20% for retirement.
20% of their gross pay might be actually over the 401k contribution limits as employees, right? That's a lot of money. So what other options do they have if they're going to max out their 401k with that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think truthfully, most physicians' pay should easily max out your 401k. I think that should be kind of an expectation, is that you're going to max out your 401k employee contribution, which for 2025 is $23,500. Most physicians should be doing a backdoor Roth IRA, which is an additional $7,000. Some physicians have access to a 457B, and that, depending on if it's governmental or not, may be a good place to store additional retirement savings. And then additionally, HSAs are a great stealth IRA retirement account. But if you've maxed out all of your available tax-protected accounts and you still haven't hit 20% for retirement, that's when you start using a taxable brokerage account to kind of get you all the way up to that 20%.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think 20% is sort of the minimum that attending should be doing. There are people that are saving 30, 40, 50% of their income. And those are the people that are going for the financial independence, retire early concept, where they're really trying to just get to a financial independence by mid-career. So we're talking like 40s, and then be able to retire. And I think that's great. If you can do that, it's totally possible. But I think 20% again is a great marker for just what you need to do to have plenty of savings by traditional retirement age.
Yep, absolutely. And I think the other thing that happened to me and a lot of folks that as they come out of training is there's a whole bunch of really, really good uses for your money all at the same time, right?
Yeah.
You're going to start saving for retirement because maybe you haven't been doing that yet. I do tell my residents that you're not going to make or break your retirement in residency from your residency savings, but you might really impact your retirement in those first early years to getting everything off to the right foot. But the other things, right? You maybe are starting a family. Childcare is wildly expensive, especially for littles. Maybe you're buying a house. Maybe you need a new car. And then your student loans as well. And all of these competing priorities really kind of hit all at once.
Mm-hmm.
And I find a lot of people in their early career, maybe if you're doing everything right, from paying your student loans, saving for retirement, paying for childcare and a mortgage, you sort of are out of money and you sort of feel, I have this huge attending paycheck and I feel broke. And how is that possible? And generally that means you're doing things right because you're saving enough and putting things in the right places. But you gotta get everything set up in the right way to get started.
I think that's really important that you pointed out, the stress of, there are a lot of shoulds in our conversation right now, right? You should put money away for retirement. You should be maxing it out. You should be, paying for your childcare, but also should be saving for their college education, right? A lot of competing priorities. And I think it's important to step back and realize that, yes, if you are stressed out about all this stuff, it means that you are doing things right. You should be stressed out.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's okay. And realize that we do all have choices. how do you think about the student loan situation and, paying off versus not, and making minimum payments versus making more payments, and balancing that with retirement contributions? How do you think about all of that?
Oof, it's tough, right? And
Yeah.
it's any progress you're making, whether you're paying down debt or saving for retirement, either way, you're improving your overall net worth. And so that is a positive. I think it is incredibly easy to get horribly stressed out and bogged down in the weeds in the student loan situation, especially the one now in the current political climate. I think from a student loan standpoint, you got to kind of pick a lane, at least early on, about if PSLF or public service loan forgiveness is on the table or not.
Mhm.
I think if it is possibly on the table for you from a future employment standpoint, I think you should try to keep that door open as much as you can and continue in the federal loan repayment programs, assuming that they get sorted out soon. If you know PSLF is not going to be an option for you because you're not going to be working for a 501c3 nonprofit or something like that, I think that getting angry about I mean, this is what I did. I refinanced privately to a lower interest rate. Thankfully, interest rates were lower back when I did it. And I got really mad and I paid really aggressively on my student loans. There's not an exact right answer. There's also psychology that comes into student loan stuff and how debt averse or not you are. And honestly, how stressed out you are by the current loan repayment situation. But I think the student loan payoff and saving for retirement is a yes and, not an either or.
This show is sponsored by Set for Life Insurance, the ultimate client experience in the insurance industry. Are you looking for the perfect insurance coverage that suits your needs? Founded in 1993 by President Jamie K. Fleischner, Set for Life Insurance specializes in individual life, disability, and long-term care insurance. As brokers, they represent numerous companies in the industry, ensuring that their clients get the best products at the most cost-effective rate. What sets Set for Life Insurance apart? You'll enjoy special discounts, priority underwriting handling, and even exceptions in the underwriting process. So why wait? Contact Set for Life Insurance today and let them be your insurance partner for life. Visit their website at www.setforlifeinsurance.com or call them toll-free at 1-888-553-3559. When I got angry at my student loans and I got tired of dealing with the servicers not knowing what the heck was going on and messing up my life, I decided to pause my retirement contributions. And thankfully, we did it in a way where we were able to pause it for a few months, pay off my loans, and then backfill with the rest of the, the extra cash flow we had once the student loans were paid off. We were able to backfill that year. That's what Dave Ramsey recommends, is put in the minimum amount to get the match, employer match, and then put the rest towards the student loans or debt in general and pay all of it off before you start contributing to retirement contributions. But I think that works for people that are in their 20s, and just getting started on making money and don't have a lot of debt like doctors do. But when you have like $300,000, $400,000 of debt, you really can't afford to pay all of that off and wait to put in for your retirement, because we're already so far behind the general population in retirement savings. We're starting usually in our 30s, right? Saving for retirement. And that first 10 years of retirement contributions can so help you. Compounding interest really depends on time, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
And if you put money away in your 20s, then it's much easier to have a lot of money when you get to your 60s than if you start putting money away in your 30s or 40s, right? And so catching up is a huge deal as well for retirement for us. So yeah, it's a tough choice, but like you said, you're going to make progress either way. But I think if you're going to do anything, at least max out that 401k, max out one of your retirement accounts. Make sure that because that tax advantage savings doesn't come back, right? It's a X amount of money that you can put away every year and then it doesn't come back. So if you can do it like me, where we were able to put them on pause, the retirement contributions, not pause, but we just minimum to get the match, and then backfill for the rest of the year, then do that, right? Because that way you get the income hit from the student loan interest away, right? Once you're done with those student loan payments, then you have so much extra money that you can then put towards those retirement contributions. But if not, then at least just max out the 401k and then pay off the student loan debt and realize that you're making progress either way, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's the thing. People get really into the weeds about the saving for retirement or paying off debt. And I think that, there's certain scenarios where it's super clear, right? If you've got a 29% interest rate on your credit card balance, of course, that's the debt priority.
Yes.
If you have an incredibly low interest rate on some other debt, maybe that's not a priority. But for the most part, a lot of it's kind of in that in-between zone. And I think any progress you can make in the positive net worth camp is really important. And exactly like you mentioned, making sure that you use that tax advantage space, because every year you don't use it, you don't get that opportunity back. And I think, as you progress along in your financial life, you will regret more and more not having maxed out the backdoor Roth IRA back years and years ago when you could have maybe.
So tell us about the tax advantages. Just give us a little primer. I think my audience mostly knows, but just remind us exactly why this tax advantage is important.
Yeah. So if you're investing in the same thing in different accounts, it is treated differently, right? So let's say you're investing in an S&P 500 index fund. If you do it in a Roth account, you pay taxes on the money before it goes into the account. You never pay taxes again. If you're putting money into a pre-tax account, like a pre-tax or traditional 401k, you get a tax break on your contributions in the year that you put it in. It grows tax-free. And then when you take it out in retirement, you pay ordinary income taxes on it. For an HSA, we've triple tax advantage, right? You get a pre-tax deduction when you put it in. It grows tax-free if you choose to invest it. And then when you take it out for healthcare expenses, it is a triple tax-free. Whereas if you invest in like a taxable brokerage account, just a regular investment account at a brokerage house, you put post-tax money in that you've already paid taxes on. And as it grows, as it kicks off interest and dividends, you pay taxes on that growth as it grows. So there is a tax drag on it as it grows. And then when you take it out, at whatever time you want to take it out, you pay capital gains on the increase in the stock price, exactly, and the increase in the basis from what you bought it for. And so there is this tax drag. And so that that's why the government limits how much money you can put into these accounts, is because there is tax protection in these accounts.
Yes. Yeah. Tax protection and also asset protection too, which we haven't touched on. But if someone sues you, they can't usually go after your retirement money, but they can go after your brokerage account. So yeah, I wanted you to summarize this for us again, because I feel like you are so good at communicating that. And I think that's the huge importance of understanding retirement accounts for physicians, is that it is a huge tax break, really the biggest tax break that is available to a regular W-2 employee, especially in the high tax brackets. So thank you so much for summarizing that for us.
Absolutely. And this is, again, getting back to why it's important to understand taxes in the first place, right? Looking at your paycheck and understanding taxes, and then understanding how that's going to impact you in retirement as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about financial milestones. What are some key financial milestones that new attendings should aim for in their first 5 years?
Oh, I love milestones, and I love celebrating milestones. I think usually the first milestone that people reach is being back to broke and having a net worth of zero, which sounds like an incredibly depressing milestone, that you're, oh, good golly, I made it, I'm worth nothing. But that is a huge deal for most physicians, because most of us, like myself, come out with a multiple six-figure negative net worth. And so at some point, your assets will equal your debts and you will have a net worth of zero. And I think that's the first big milestone to celebrate. After that, some people hit $100,000 net worth. Some people hit their student loan payoff next. There's different milestones like that, but those should be celebrated as well. The first time you max out all your retirement accounts, the first time you hit $1 million. There's a lot of different things to celebrate. And I think making sure that your spouse is on board. Also, they're usually fun people to celebrate with, but also making sure that they understand where you are from a financial standpoint, and really celebrating that. I remember buying a very, very nice bottle of wine when my husband and I paid off our student loans. So
excellent.
Really important, I think, to recognize kind of where you started from and where you're getting to.
Totally agree. Great. Yeah, I think that's so important to celebrate and, reward yourself, because sometimes it can be a drudgery to, really do all this adulting. We're talking like
Mhm.
major max adulting right now. And it's important to just be a kid and have fun. When my family paid off my student loan debt, we had depicted the student loans and the macaronis. And I shared pictures of, our celebration. We had confetti, and my kids learned how to count as we took those macaronis out every time we made a student loan payment. And, once it was done, and there's a bunch of macaronis left in the jar still from all the interest that we didn't have to pay because we paid it off early. And that was so we just threw the macaroni around and threw, confetti around and made a big bowl of mac and cheese to celebrate.
There is a lot of different, I feel like, different vibes, right? Mac and cheese Chardonnay vibes of celebrating. But it's so important, I think, to make sure you realize how big of a deal it is where you come from on these things and making progress.
Totally agree. What about insurance? What's the role of disability and life insurance in an attending's financial plan?
This is insurance is the least sexy thing to talk about, I think, from a financial planning standpoint. And I remember when I was sort of early on in my financial literacy journey that this was my least favorite thing to learn about because it's not fun, right?
Yeah.
Insurance is paying for something that you hope doesn't happen and paying for something you hope you don't use. That being said, I think disability insurance might be one of the most, if not the most important thing, especially for early career physicians. Depending on what your specialty and your income is, your future earning potential as a young physician might be easily in the neighborhood of $10 million. And if you had a $10 million house, you would never dream of not insuring that. And so if you think of it that way, I think the idea of all of your assets, especially early in your career, your future ability to earn a high income is by far your largest financial asset. And so that should be absolutely something that you insure. And so disability, specifically own occupation disability insurance, to make sure that you and your family are protected in case you are unable to work as a physician, is wildly important.
Totally agree. So we did 2 excellent shows on disability insurance recently, one with Jamie Fleischner and one with Stephanie Pearson. So please go back and listen to that. And really important for residents going into attendinghood is if you had access to that GSI policy, that guaranteed standard issue policy is usually not available to attending. So if you have it and can keep it going, it's a great way, especially if you have pre-existing health conditions or things that might raise your rates as an attending. Look into that. Make sure you have that locked down and you can keep it going as an attending, and maybe increase the benefit and get the buy up on that. But if you can keep it going, keep it going. And if you are new attending, get that disability insurance policy in place when you don't have as much of a medical history, because it's the lowest rate you're going to get probably in your lifetime. So important transition. So make sure you go back and listen to those episodes if you haven't already. So right now we're recording this after Monday, where this is match week, and people have found out whether they matched or not. And some people are in the process of scrambling, which is not the end of the world. And soon we're going to, on Friday, find out if people matched or not. So it's an important time for people in the residency, in the training pathway. I know you're an associate program director. You're going to find out who matched to you. As you're looking at those medical students then going into residency positions, you have a big megaphone right now. What's the one financial piece of advice you want to give them?
I think creating positive inertia. And I think inertia in finance is either the best thing or the worst thing, depending how you utilize it. And so I do have the opportunity to talk to the 4th year medical school class at the University of Minnesota about this. And this is the first paycheck you're going to be getting, right? Coming out of med school and you start residency, you're going to be getting a reliable paycheck. And if you can carve out even a small amount, we're not talking about 20% for retirement at this stage, but if you can just carve out a small amount to set aside for retirement savings or for any kind of savings, just to build that muscle and that you learn how to live on less than you make, I think creating that positive savings inertia is one of the most important things you can do in the med student to resident transition. And then for sure on a much larger scale in that resident to attending transition.
100%. Yes. The creating positive inertia, creating good financial habits during this time. It's a lot easier as a resident to create a financial budget or a monthly, just start tracking your monthly spending because your income is less and more or less fixed and you have less commitments at that time. So if you can start building that financial muscle right now, you are training the skill set that's going to make you a financially successful attending. And so if you can get those habits in place, create that inertia right now, that's what's going to set you up for success as you transition from resident to attending. So I love that. Thank you. So let's get into the rapid fire segment. We like to end every show with just a little bit of lighthearted fun. Just give me the first thing that comes to mind and we won't hold you to it. What's the best financial decision you've made as a new attending?
Maxing out all of my tax protected accounts from day one.
Yeah. What's one financial mistake you wish you could undo?
Oh, I opened a Roth IRA in college because I thought I was really smart and I kept putting money in every month waiting for compounding interest to take off. And I spent 3 years without the money invested. It just sat in a money market account and I hadn't invested it because I didn't realize it didn't go into the stock market because I didn't understand how it worked. So I would love to go back in time and actually invest those early Roth IRA contributions.
Yeah, I mean, money market will get you 4 or 5%, depending on the time frame. But yes, you're right. A lot of people make this mistake. Actually, you're not alone. And to realize that when you put money into these accounts, it actually has to get manually invested. And I think that mistake is easy to make in an HSA actually, because a lot of the HSAs, will keep your money kind of cash or cash equivalents, and you actually have to choose. Go in there and make the choice to then invest it and then manually invest it. So yeah, make sure you're looking at all your accounts and make sure the money's actually invested in stocks, bonds, or whatever you want to invest in. What's one book or resource you recommend for financial literacy?
I love the White Coat Investor book, and I love The Simple Path to Wealth and The Millionaire Next Door are probably my 3 favorite books.
Yes, love those two. What's one piece of financial advice you wish every new attending knew?
I think that this isn't as hard as you think. I think that a lot of physicians are wildly intimidated learning about financial literacy or feel stigmatized trying to learn about it, right? We didn't go into medicine to be rich. This isn't why we chose to be physicians, but this is part of the job is having a high income, which is a great blessing. And I think feeling not intimidated and working on your financial literacy is the one piece of advice I wish everybody knew.
Yeah, I used to think, this financial literacy stuff was for the finance bros, right? And turns out I turned into a finance bro, not because I love money or want to be on a private yacht for the rest of my life, but more because I want to, my why was making sure I could provide for my kids in a stable and steady way. And part of what I've learned about medicine is that the job is not as stable as you think it is. There are a lot of different ways that the physician income can get impacted, whether it's because someone else decides it for you or because you decide that, you're burning out, you need space, you need time, you need to cut back your schedule, you need to make sure you're there for your kids for their after school activities or whatever. There is a lot of room in medicine, thankfully, to modify our schedule to fit what we want in the moment. And a lot of that has to do with financial stability too. You need to have the financial means to be able to cut back at your hours or sit out a 3-month long waiting period while you're getting credentialed into a new job and you don't have a job, So all of that takes money, and financial wherewithal is how you create that freedom and and that's how you make medicine work for you and create that balance.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think physician wellness is, of course, this hot button thing that people talk about. And I think one of the areas that gets overlooked quite a bit is the importance of financial wellness for physicians.
Let's talk about wellness. What's
fun?
Let's talk about splurging. What's one fun splurge that you don't regret?
Going to Ireland and London with my best friend. We left our husbands and kids and took a girls trip and went and did everything we wanted to do. We saw Wicked in London when we landed there. I mean, we just kind of did it up and it was totally amazing. And I don't regret a single dollar.
What's one thing you wish was taught about finances in medical training?
Well, a lot. I mean, this isn't a quick one. I think understanding taxes, understanding how taxes impact retirement accounts and things like that. And then some of the basics of cash flow management and debt management. I think all of those things kind of build on each other. And so I kind of wish the whole thing was taught.
Yes. Well, thank you for doing your part in spreading the message.
Do my best.
Dr. Holbrook, this has been such a great discussion. The transition from resident to attending and from med student to resident are exciting times, but also ones filled with important financial decisions. So your advice today has given new attendings a roadmap to start their careers on solid financial footing, and I thank you for that. Before we wrap up, where can our listeners connect with you and learn more from your work?
Absolutely. I'm on Blue Sky at Amy Holbrook, MD. I'm also on Twitter on the same handle, and I'm also on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again for joining us, Dr. Holbrook. And to our listeners, if you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your fellow physicians who are navigating this transition. Remember, making smart financial choices early in your career can set you up for long-term success and freedom. I'll see you next time on Finding Financial Freedom. Stay frugal, y'all.
The content shared on this podcast should not be taken as individualized financial advice. We are here to share our knowledge and experiences, but it is crucial to consult with professionals such as accountants, financial advisors, or attorneys who can provide personalized guidance based on your specific needs.